Hey everyone, Anthony Franzese here. Man, do I have something fun for you guys? We're trying to spice things up a little bit over here on the podcast. So this week we have Sarah Berkley, who is the AVP of Wellbeing and Engagement at NFP, and then next week we're going to have her husband on to share his perspective. He's a surgeon, as you can imagine. He can't work from home. He's a pretty busy guy. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's going to be fun to hear both sides of the story, and we'll see how it goes. They have two kids, and they're both kind of sharing their perspective on how they manage career and family life, and who's responsible for what. And yeah, we'll see. I appreciate you listening. If you would click the follow button, leave me a rating. That'd mean the world to me. It's the best way to help grow the podcast. Anyway, on to the show. Welcome back to the Successful Working Parents Podcast, the podcast where we talk to successful working parents. The title is pending, but my guest today is very real. She is the Assistant Vice President of Wellbeing and Engagement at NFP. She's a mother of two. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Berkley. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us. So, we usually start off with just a quick background on your career, if you'd share that.
Yeah, sure. So, I started after college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I wanted to do like corporate event planning. So I started working at this company where I planned conferences in healthcare, and I knew nothing about healthcare at the time. And I learned a lot in planning these conferences. A lot of them were about on-site health clinics and corporate wellness, and that's just sort of where I learned more about the topic. And um, yeah, in my personal life, I was always sort of a healthy person and was trying to think, okay, what can I do? What can I take from my personal life that I enjoy and how can I turn that into a job? And learning more about this like corporate wellness field, it just seemed to be a great fit. So I remember talking to a speaker at one of my events asking, how did he get into it? He was a very senior person at a really large company doing well-being, and he suggested that I get a master's in public health. I had never heard of public health. I didn't even know what that was at the time, so I googled it, and it really did align with a lot of the things I was interested in. So I went back to school. I got a master's in public health. I started working while I was in grad school. I worked at Con Ed in their occupational health department doing employee wellness programs for them. And then I worked at a company called Health Advocate as an employee wellness specialist. And then I'm at NFP. I've been here for about 8.5 years. Um, and yeah, I'm the AVP of Wellbeing and Engagement. So I run our Northeast region's wellbeing practice. And it's been great.
Awesome. Yeah, and I was trying to think about when you and I first met him. I think it was you were at NFP, but it had to be probably in like 2015, 2016. So you might have just gotten there.
Yeah, I think it was in the early stages, and you have switched jobs a few times since then, I think. But I
Yeah.
remember we got coffee
Yeah.
at
In
a
the city.
coffee shop in the city, yeah,
Yeah.
near where the office was. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. And it's funny your story because that was kind of how I got into the corporate health side as well. Just like wanting to do something that more aligned with what I was interested in, and the idea of like trying to be healthy while working all day was interesting. And I was like, oh, let me try to help other people do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us a little bit about your role as mother.
So, I'm essentially the default parent. My husband is wonderful and he's a great dad, but he is a surgeon, and so he has a really busy, not flexible work schedule.
Mm.
So,
Hmm.
when things come up with the kids, somebody's sick, they don't have school, there's a doctor's appointment, whatever it is, I'm always the one who needs to kind of rearrange my schedule, cancel meetings, move things around, call in from the car, whatever it is, to try to
Yeah.
make it work. So I try to be very active with my kids, and be there as much as I can while also trying to be there for my job too. And it's not always easy. Um, so yeah, I would say that's sort of my role in this household. And my husband does as much as he can, and when he's home, he's does everything. But he's just can't always be home, and he certainly really can't change his schedule last minute. I mean, he's booking out surgeries and clinics and months out, and so I think not that my job isn't important. I do think it's important, but I'm very lucky that I have a flexible workplace and that I can change things around and people are pretty understanding. And he can't really cancel on patients. Like, there are people who have prepped for surgery and haven't eaten. And then, so it's
Yeah.
not easy for him to cancel on, somebody's cancer surgery.
Yeah. So what kind of surgeon is he?
He's a colorectal surgeon.
Okay. Yeah, that seems pretty important. I think probably for the best.
Yeah,
Probably
and
for the
he does
best that he.
colonoscopies, and so, people have prepped for the colonoscopies, and you don't that would stink if you were getting ready for a colonoscopy and, your doctor canceled, and same thing for a surgery that you've been waiting for. And there are obviously also, emergencies that come up. So, yeah, he just can't be flexible, unfortunately, but, does his best.
So, and your kids are like 1 and 3.5, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So they're 2 years apart, um, almost 3.5, almost 1.5. Yeah.
So
So it's
how was
chaos.
the jump from 1 to 2?
Uh, it's such a different experience having 2 because with the first one, you know, nursing was sort of like this quiet time and it was peaceful and
Yeah.
relaxing. And then, when the baby's asleep, you have so much downtime in the beginning because they sleep all the
Yeah.
time. And just that totally, both of those things go away because I'm trying to nurse. And sure, if my husband's home or someone else is around, they can kind of entertain the toddler. But sometimes it's just me and the toddler's climbing on top of me while I'm trying to nurse, or and then
Yeah.
if when the baby's asleep, you have this other kid that you have to sort of run around with and entertain, and you're exhausted. So it's just you really don't have as much downtime as you did with the first. And I think when you're in it with just one, you don't even realize sort of how, I don't want to say easy because it's not easy, and especially when you're in it, it doesn't feel
Yeah.
easy. But to me, the toddler has been harder than the baby. And now I have two toddlers, which is crazy. But in the
Yeah.
beginning, the toddler, in my opinion, was harder than the newborn.
Yeah. No, I mean, we have a newborn, so
Yeah.
all along, I keep saying to my wife, like, could you imagine if there was like a 2.5-year-old running around right now while we were doing this?
Yeah.
Like to your point, like it is hard. It's hard, but it's obviously manageable. We're managing it, but it's like it's hard to think about what it would be like if there was a 2-year-old and maybe like a 4-year-old. Like there's two kids running around while you're doing that. Like you're right. It's a whole other layer that we could only fathom at this point.
Yeah, and now they're getting to the point where they are interacting with each other a little bit more. The baby's 15 months. He's not a baby anymore. So, they can play together a little bit, but they definitely, especially the older one, the toddler does, or the older toddler, doesn't realize how rough he can be, and so he thinks he's kind of giving a hug, but really it's just like an arm around the little one's throat, and like doesn't realize. So I feel like I'm a referee, honestly, just making sure that they're not hurting each other. But it really has become so sweet. They play together, they laugh with each other. They make it's so that is very cute. So I think we're starting. I'm hoping to get to more of a sweet spot where they can start to sort of play on their own, but they definitely still need an adult around to make sure they don't hurt each other by accident.
So you're both back to working full time, right? So what are you doing? Are you doing daycare? Are you doing a nanny?
Yeah, so like I said, I have a flexible job, so I work from home most of the time. I do go into an office 1 or 2 days a week, but yeah, we have a nanny. We're very lucky. That's obviously a privilege to have a nanny. So we do have a nanny. My older one does go to school. He goes 5 days a week from 9 to 1, so he's out of the house for like half the day, and then in the afternoons, the nanny's with both the kids.
Yeah. So does your husband's schedule change each week, or like are you able to actually like are you able to plan anything, or is it really like week to week? It's different, so he can't do the same things every week with you or for you.
Um, it's so I so he when he know if he knows he's gonna be in the OR operating, like, and he knows that in advance, obviously, so we know that those are days that I can't really count on him being around. Because if everything goes well and he can be home at a normal time, wonderful, but I can't rely on it. So
Yeah.
he's not in the OR in the same days every week. That was the plan originally. When he first started, he was supposed to have certain OR days, but now he's gotten busier, so he's kind of filling in time when he can to use the OR. On days where he's just either admin, which is just an administrative day where he just gets to catch up on things, that's easy for him. He can be around more. But again, that's not happening every week, and it doesn't happen on the same day each week. So he knows sort of in advance, but it's not the same each week
Yeah.
exactly.
And
I would say
there's no working from home, right?
no. I mean, not really. Like sometimes on his no matter what, he has to go in the mornings and round on his patients and check in on everyone. I'd say sometimes after that, there's occasionally times when he could like come home and maybe make calls from home, but that's extremely, extremely rare when he's able to do that. Um, so, this morning he had an admin day, so he had a 7 a.m. call, which he was able to take from home, and then he could take my older one to school. And so, he takes him to school when he can, but my son's been in school for over a year, and I think he's taken him to school less than 10 times,
Yeah.
because he's usually gone even before any of us wake up.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So was it what you had expected, or like did you kind of have to like change your plan and change your scheduling around when you after you had your kids, given the type of work you both do?
Um, well, obviously, I knew what I was signing up for when I married a doctor,
Sure.
but so, it's weird because I didn't have my first kid until very early COVID. So I've never known a life or a time when I would have had to go into the office 5 days a week anyway. So
Yeah.
it's not like I had to make that shift because I always started since having kids, I've always been remote or at least mainly remote. Um, so in a way that was that was great, and it was really difficult for me to understand how people did it when they had to also go into the office when both parents have to go into an office every single day, full
Yeah.
day. I
Yeah.
just and to me, I'm like, I can't even believe families managed that, and they still are obviously in some cases, and I can't manage. So I didn't really have to change anything because that was kind of the world we were in when I had kids anyway. Was like already the flexibility was sort of built in, and I'm grateful for that. But it's also not easy. I'm home a lot. I'm home all the time. I feel like I'm with my kids all the time, which is fantastic. But I'm also a social person. I feel isolated a lot, and working from home is wonderful, but it's also isolating. And so I like to be able to talk to other adults and get out of my house. And so I'm happy that I have the option to go into an office a couple days a week if I can and if I want. For me, that's the perfect balance. And yeah, I would go crazy without that, I think.
So is that like your main way of dealing with the isolation, is to just okay, this day I'm actually going to go into the office to talk to some adults?
Yeah, I try to make it a priority to go in at least 1 day a week, sometimes 2, but honestly, that, like, sometimes changes last minute, especially since my older one's been in school, he gets sick more often, there's doctor's appointments, like, there's things that so I do have to sometimes cancel that, but, and sometimes our nanny gets sick, and then that falls on me too, to just be home with the kids, so yes, I do make a huge effort to go in at least 1 to 2 days a week, and then I also try to schedule because during the workday I have childcare. So during that time, I do try to schedule in my calendar time for myself at least 1 or 2 times a week. So whether that's lunch with a friend, I mean, I take my dog out for a walk. If I can do a longer walk, I will. I try to schedule in a workout class 1 or 2 days a week, where I actually go in person now to exercise, and I enjoy that. So yeah, I try to, and I have to schedule it into my calendar. Like I can't do it if it's not written down in my calendar. Then it just everything else fills up. So yeah, I try my best to use the calendar to schedule time for myself and to schedule time for even just work. I mean, it's so weird. Now I feel like work is quote vacation. Like I never thought I'd feel that way where I'm like, oh, I can't wait for work to start up again on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, the weekends are fun, but they're hectic and they're exhausting and they're amazing. But, when I'm working, I have a desk job. I work at a computer. At least I can sit down and take a few minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, I kind of like look forward to work now and never thought I would really say that.
Yeah. There's worse things. There's worse things to be looking forward to, I guess.
Yeah.
So, in speaking of work, you're a well-being an engagement uh, consultant. So, do you? I assume well-being and health is a really important part of your own life. So, how are you like making sure that when you became a mom, you were able to still prioritize that? Is there anything that you've kind of learned that you've been able to bring into your consulting practice since then? Like, how has that been going?
Yeah, so I definitely need to practice what I preach. I always talk to friends to clients about the importance of not just for themselves as individuals, but for their employees. I have a public health background, so I look at organizations and employee populations. So, how do we make it so that employees feel comfortable taking some time for themselves? They feel comfortable speaking up when they, are having a hard day or when they need help or, support. So I certainly need to practice what I preach, and I do. I do that with the people on my team as well. I manage two people, and I'm always very transparent with them about, what, I have to take my son to the doctor, so I'll be out for the next hour. Things like that, so that they also feel comfortable doing the same things and know that it's okay. So transparency is really important, I think, and I try to do it with clients as well, although that's a little harder. And yeah, just using my calendar to schedule the time in for myself. So I sometimes, of course, have to cancel it or move it. If I scheduled an exercise class or something and something comes up for work, I will change it. But, I do try to put something like that into my calendar 1 to 2 times a week. Um, and then on weekends when my husband's not on call, I same thing. I try to schedule an exercise class for myself or maybe lunch with a friend. And he does a really good job of taking things off my plate because he knows it's tough to be home with the two kids. And
Yeah.
so, the second he comes home, he's like, okay, let's all go for a walk with the dog, and mom's going to stay here and relax. Or he'll say to me, you go take the dog for a walk, or, you get out and do something. So he always kind of takes over the second he gets home to help out. He's always supportive of me, going out to dinner with a friend or, something like that, just so that I can get out and have some time as a grown up and as a human, not just a mom.
So whenever he's not really on the clock, you're like, "Hey, bro, it's your turn. Here you go."
Yeah, but I don't even really have to ask, which is amazing, and I think that's a huge thing is, like, even he just know he like, first of all, if I am having a difficult time, I will say something and say, "Look, I really need a break," but I also don't often have to do that, like, he just knows. He knows that when he comes home, like, he's on dad duty immediately, and that often means taking things off my plate. He we also when my oldest started school, we have to give him lunch every day, right? So he took responsibility for that. He said, "I will be in charge of lunches." And so he makes them the night before. And it's not 100% of the time if he's working late and doesn't even get home till after bedtime, I'll do it. Or if he's doing bedtime with the kids and I'm downstairs kind of cleaning up, I'll make the lunch. But basically, he's the default parent for lunches, and that's just something now I literally don't even have to think about, and it's such a huge load off of me because I think of all the other stuff. I make sure that they have, clothes that fit for the season that we're in or the season coming up. They have activities they're signed up for, like all these little things that like are sort of invisible that you don't even realize. I go in and I switch their clothes out and all these little invisible things that I take on, like, I think it's really helpful to say, okay, you are 100% responsible for, certain activities or certain things that we know that he can manage. And that's really helpful.
Yeah, it's a interesting thing and something I'm starting to notice, in my marriage and family situation. Like, you don't really just want to obviously like keep score and like keep a tally of like who's doing what, but I think that it does naturally. It just naturally happens, right? It's like, oh, you know what you're doing and you know what is not your responsibility. Like, how do you make sure you're not doing too much of a tit for tat or too much of a hey, let's make sure it's a perfectly even split? Like, how do you handle that almost more like psychologically?
Yeah, that's not easy. I mean, there are certainly times when I feel a little resentful just because, the nanny's out sick again and I'm the one who has to cancel everything and move meetings around and it's super stressful. So and it's not his fault. He's working really hard. He's not out golfing. He's not out party. He's working really hard and he has a stressful job, but it's not always easy to not feel little resentment. I mean, we are pretty good communicators, so when that happens, it's certainly something I bring up. And he's usually very responsive to it. And then he kind of like goes out of his way show that he's appreciative, which I think too is sometimes it's like I don't even mind doing all these extra things, but just like show me show me that you notice it and that you appreciate it, so it's not even like I need you to take all the stuff off my plate. I'm doing it, I'm managing it, but just appreciate it, and let
Yeah,
me know that you notice it. And so he does a very good job with that. He makes me coffee every single I like iced coffee, so he'll make coffee every single night and put it in the fridge for me so that in the morning it's cold. And so there's like little things like that that
that's cute.
yeah, there's things like that that, like, just shows that he cares, that he wants to do what even small things to kind of, like, make my mornings easier because 'cause I'm alone with the kids every morning. Um, but it's not easy, and there's certainly times where, we one of us might blow up at the other person just because some things have built up.
Sure.
But again, just, like, talking about what needs to happen, what are the activities coming up, what are the things that we need to manage, and then, who does it make sense to work on that? And usually it's me, but at least I know we're talking about it and he's thinking about it and he notices all the little things that I'm doing.
Do you think that couples that are they're both working, do you think that they should strive to try to get as close to a 50-50 share of the parenting responsibilities as possible, or do you think it's okay if one parent's doing more than the other?
I mean, I think if there's like in a perfect world, everything was equal, yeah, it'd be 50-50. But we don't live in a perfect world. I think, I don't think it's also really reasonable to be 50-50 all the time. Like,
Yeah,
there are some times when I'm really busy at work or I have to travel for work. And so things would shift more onto him. And then there's other times where I'm less busy and I can be more flexible and it's not as big of a deal. And he definitely can't be so I don't think it's sure in a perfect world 50-50 is great. I don't think that's realistic and it's certainly not realistic all the time.
yeah,
There are going to be times where one parent has to take on more than the other. I also have like aging parents who have their own health issues and there have been times when I've had to go take care of them. They live out of state. Um, so there's things around that too where he's had to pick up things because I'm also, trying to help my parents. So it's not I don't think it can be 50-50. It sort of depends on each person's job and the flexibility that they have or don't have.
yeah. It's probably also not really a great barometer because it's easy to not be right. It's easy to not be 50-50. I think it's hard to always know. Some people probably feel like, okay, well, the things I do are harder than the things that you do, or like it's hard to really. Do we all agree that every task is weighted the same? So it's probably not a great barometer, but I do think it's probably easy for couples to slip into this notion of, okay, well, I do these four things, you do these two things, right? So it's easy to start to feel like it's becoming uneven.
Yeah, and I think there's probably things that I do that I don't mind that he would hate doing, and vice versa. There are things that
Yeah,
like he does that I'm like, ugh, I would never want to do that. So there's certain like yeah, it's sort of like the waiting thing, like you were saying. There's certain things that I really don't like doing, and there's certain things that he really doesn't like doing, and the other one doesn't mind. So great, so that works out. Um, yeah, so 50-50 is a dream goal. Like I
yeah,
that's like a lofty, like I can't even imagine that in a real world scenario because not
yeah.
everything is equal. Like all things are not equal at all times.
Yeah. My wife and I were just having this conversation about like doing things that you like or don't mind doing versus the things that you don't like doing. And it's like I appreciate when she or anybody does something for me that I know they don't necessarily want to do, but they're really doing it like to help me out, as opposed to like anybody could do something that you like doing anyway, right? So I feel like it is nice to show that effort, and like you said, like your husband will show you that he'll do things to show he appreciates you. So I think that when people do things that you don't like doing, and you know that they're doing it for you, like I think it's good to show their at least to show the appreciation for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pivoting into the public health thing, I want to talk to you a little bit about this. So, what are some of the things that you think, um, like, are the biggest impediments to employees getting healthier? Like, what are the main reasons why employees aren't healthy? Do you think that it's related to the workplace? You think it's just like a human thing?
I think it's both. Obviously, people are spending a little less time in the workplace in certain industries because they're working from home more, but certainly the environment of where they work plays a huge role in the ability to be healthy, right? There's this, I actually just did a talk last week on some trends around well-being, and one of the points that I made is that there's more of a focus on the employer and the environment that the employee is in, and less on the employee needing to keep themselves him or herself healthy. It's like kind of like when a fish is swimming in a water bowl, like the fish doesn't realize that it's in water. It doesn't see the water. The water just is. It just exists. And it's sort of like that's kind of how your environment is, right? You don't necessarily like see all the things that are affecting your decisions or whether they're healthy or not healthy. And so the best I say like the best well-being program is one that people don't even realize that they're in. So there's just like little things around behavioral economics, like, keeping the healthy food out in the open eye level and the less healthy food in a cabinet that you have to open. Just even that you probably don't even realize you're going to be more likely to reach for the fruit that's standing out than go and search for something in a cabinet that you can't see. So certainly the environment plays a huge role. The culture of the organization plays a huge role. Like I was saying before, making your employees feel like it's okay for them to take time for themselves. It's okay for them to do these activities that will keep them healthier physically, mentally. It's okay to ask for help. I think mental health in the workplace has exploded, or I guess negative mental, like bad mental health in the workplace has
Yeah.
exploded. People are stressed out, they're burnt out, they're feeling like they're being pulled at all angles. And um, so, do you have a workplace that allows employees to take time for themselves to access help? Are there resources readily available and destigmatized so they're not afraid to ask for it? Those are all things that can help. Um, and then, of course, where you grow up, where you live, those necessarily, you know, an employer can't really affect some of those things, but all of that plays a role. You have to give people the resources and then give them the autonomy to actually use those resources.
Are there any studies or data out yet showing that people have gotten healthier since they haven't had to go to the office every day? Or is it maybe a little too soon to figure that
Um,
out?
I think that's a tough link to draw. So no, I haven't seen. Short answer is no. I haven't seen studies specifically saying that, but I will say there have been studies that have shown having flexibility improves mental health and well-being. So the fact that people can be home and can, um, you know, schedule an appointment or something that they need to do during the workday and kind of move work around that, or they can work if they have to do something in the morning, then they can work a little bit less. So flexibility, there's definitely been studies around showing that that can really have a huge impact um, on mental health and well-being.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say personally, I think it's helped me because just even making my own lunches, going from working in an office all day and ordering with everybody else wherever they're getting food from to now like kind of just making a lunch and in theory it being healthier than ordering out every day. I think that's helped a lot with my own health.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely pros. I mean, like I said too, you probably have time. You can like schedule in a walk you can schedule in a walk, or you can schedule in a 20-minute workout or whatever throughout your day, which maybe you wouldn't be able to do when you're in an office. On the
Yeah.
flip side, going into an office, probably you're walking more, and people who are home, you're more sedentary, and so you're not walking as much. So there's pros and cons. I think the flexibility helps with the mental health, but then also being home all the time can affect some people's mental health in terms of loneliness, and that's an issue too. So it depends on the person, obviously, but there's pros and cons to it. But I do just think having more autonomy over your schedule has been shown to improve mental
Yeah.
health, mental well-being.
Yeah. When we first met like 8 or 9 years ago, I was working at a company that was focused on physical activity and it was all about like, oh, like sitting is the new smoking. And we were trying to get people to move more. Mental health was just starting to become a bigger topic in the workplace. And then it obviously picked up a lot of steam and certainly became at the forefront during COVID.
Yeah.
Now I know that also fertility is a big workplace topic as well, and women's health, which is where I'm currently working. Where do you see trends going in the next 2 to 3 years as far as like the big focus? Do you think that there's still more ground to gain in the mental health world, or is there like another budding employee health topic that's going to grow?
So mental health and well-being is still a very big focus, and I think will continue. Other things that are popping up though are definitely the infertility space. I think there's now, with everyone being home during the pandemic, there has been a lot of focus on understanding that an employee isn't just someone who shows up at work and then poof, they disappear. Like they have things going on outside of their lives. They have families. And so the focus now for employers, and particularly progressive employers, is really now like caring for your employees. So it's like you want to attract, retain, and care for. And that includes families, right? And so infertility is a way to show that you care about your employees and the choices they want to make, whether to become a parent or not. It's also a play towards DEI and B, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because um, people can start people of any backgrounds or family types can expand their families if they want to, if in ways that they want. So there's also sort of a play around that too. It's supporting people in becoming a family, however that looks, right?
Sure.
Heterosexual couples, same-sex couples, single people who want to be a parent, like
Yeah.
offering those resources. And then, there's also, if there's an infertility issue, that takes a drastic toll on someone's mental health. And so having a resource that can potentially help that is also affecting someone's wellness or well-being. And you don't even, it's not like you're sending out a survey and saying, "Hey, are you depressed? Yes or no." I mean, no one's, that you can't really do that. But if you are having issues with fertility, you have so much anxiety, you have depression, you're feeling, beaten down. It's sort of, you're putting this program in place and you're helping someone's mental health and well-being without specifically saying this is for your mental health well-being. You know what I mean? You're kind of attacking it from another angle, and it's has this byproduct. So you're helping this issue, and it has this byproduct of also helping someone's mental health and well-being, in addition to the financial impact that it can have. I mean, having infertility or treatments, it's all very expensive. Occasionally insurance will cover it, often they won't. So there's also this financial aspect to it. So there's like
Sure.
financial well-being too. So certainly infertility treatments and services are big. Caregiver support is big, and that really blossomed during the pandemic because everyone was home with their kids. Their kids were home from school. So it's like, how am I supposed to work with my kids running around here? So caregiver support, whether it's for children, it also can be for elderly, for a spouse, whoever, adults with special needs. Um, having services so that people can take care of their loved ones, and then they will be able to work. You really can't work if you're caring for somebody else. Being a caregiver is difficult. It's taxing on your mental health, so it's another link to mental health and well-being. So
Yeah.
so that's another really important topic, is the caregiver support as well.
What do you think, like 5, 7 years from now, we'll be talking about that isn't really being talked about now, if you had a guess?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Um, I mean, I hope that all of these things will be more commonplace. Like right now, it's such a small percentage of employers that offer fertility and caregiving and all these things. So I hope that in 7 years or whenever, it's not even going to be a conversation. Like in the same way that it's like you don't even think about health insurance to your employer, that's just expected.
Yeah.
I hope that it's not even really a conversation, because it's just sort of become more standard. Um, but we'll see.
Do you think that I know that I think the answer is yes, but I feel like this just kind of half rhetorically, like, is addressing these things is the employer the one that should be addressing these things? Your mental health and all these other topics.
As opposed to who else would? Just the individual?
The individual, or I don't know, the government, or just any, like, does it make sense for the employer to be the one that's solving these problems?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the employer alone. There's certainly, there is a little bit of individual responsibility. There's certainly things that the government, whether local or federal, they can put things in place to support people as well. So it's not employers alone, but, employees dedicate a lot of their time and energy towards work, and they're, trying to help their companies be successful. They're helping the companies profit. And they are an extremely, like, without employees, without hardworking, smart employees, companies can't run. They can't run. So it's sort of a win-win. It's in the best interest of companies to take care of their employees, and then in return, employees will take care of their companies. And it's kind of this cyclical, like, I'm working for you and I need you to, like, I'm trying to help you as an organization, and I need the organization to also help me as a human. Whether it's with family, whether it's with, finding purpose in my career and my, like, what I'm trying to do. I think there's value in that too. People don't want to feel like they're just this replaceable cog, like their employer doesn't care, because then they're not going to work hard for you. They're not going to care. They're going to be more likely to leave, and then you're going to have to hire and train. And so, employers can't solve for everything, but they can certainly put resources in place to help their employees. Right. So yeah, it's this cyclical thing. Employees take care of the companies, companies take care of employees. There are things employers can do that the government can't do. I mean, they're seeing companies have access to their employees every single day. Um, the government's not going to reach out to each person individually every day. So there's certain things that they can do to help make people's lives better. And I think if you're wanting people to work hard for you and make your business profitable, then that's sort of the least that you can do, honestly. It's really important to do that and take care of your people.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. All right, we're going to move into the final segment called Sarah's Advice Corner. I'm going to ask you for some advice on a few topics. You ready?
Yep. Sure.
Okay, great. Well, first question would be, what advice would you have for a parent who feels like the other parent isn't doing as much as they are and wants there to be a more equitable split?
Yeah. So,
And I'm
I
not
mean,
saying that that's your situation.
yeah, no, I know.
We're gonna let your husband state his case one day as well. But just if that, for people that feel that way, what advice would you give?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like I said, there's no way everything can be 50-50 all the time. It's just not possible. Um, Communication is the most important thing. You can't just put your head down and not mention anything. You're going to explode at certain points. So if you feel like your partner can and should take on more, if you feel like you're taking on too much, you have to talk about it. You can't expect your partner to guess that you're struggling or that you need help or you need things taken off your plate. So certainly the first thing is communication. And then after that, if there are certain tasks that can be delegated to each of you, and so you're the default for that specific task, like, in our example, my husband is the default for making lunch for my son. I think that is helpful too. And then there's no questions. It's not like an ongoing conversation or argument. It's just like, this is your job. And sure, if you can't do it one day, I'll take over. But I'd say those are probably the two things that have helped us the most.
What advice would you give to somebody who has let work kind of take control and they haven't been focusing on their health enough?
Oh, well, so I think there will be times when that happens and there's not much you can do, right? If you have a busy time in work and it is what it is. But I think when you can schedule little things, even if it's just short amount of time, 15, 20, 30 minutes, um, put it into your calendar so that you don't overbook yourself and that you can take time for yourself. I mean, it's so important to do it, whether it's during the workday or on the weekend, whenever it is. It doesn't have to be during the workday, obviously, but during times that are slower and times when you can, I would just say make sure you schedule things in to do whatever makes you feel happy. I mean, for me, I'm a social person. I like getting out and being active. For some people, maybe it's reading a book or cooking or, whatever it is. It's really important to take that time. And especially if you are a manager or a leader in any way, doing that to lead by example and show that the people that work with you and work for you, that it's okay. I think that's even more important to do. So it's
Yeah.
not just for yourself, it's for others as well.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Um, I mean, I don't think it's applicable to this topic per se, but something that someone told me that I feel like comes up often is that bad news does not get better with time. And I remember there was something happening with work something bad happened with a client. And I was like, I don't want to have to tell them I was so nervous about it, and somebody I work with said, "Bad news doesn't get better with time. So you're better off just saying it and getting, because it really only gets worse." So it's not really applicable to this, but like that actually is advice that I come back to often, both in my personal life, if something happens with a family member or a friend, or and also at work. If you make a mistake at work, um, it's better to just sort of own up to it quickly, and so that you can fix it. And I think people respect you for taking ownership, and moving on from it, and change and learning from it.
Yeah, I like that. What advice would you give your former self?
um I think I would say, like, don't sweat the small stuff. There are certain things that you in the moment feel like a huge deal, and sure, I think, okay, that's okay. It feels like a big deal right now, but just be able to tell yourself, this will blow over. I won't think about this as much in a week, in a year, in 3 years, So there are certain things where you're like, "Oh no, I'm not going to recover from this," or, you're embarrassed about something that happened, or something you said or did, and it's nothing really lasts that long. And so just don't sweat the small stuff, and just, I don't know. I'd say I feel like that was something I wish could tell myself when I was younger. Like, this is just not that big of a deal, or at least if it is now, it won't be that big of a deal in a week or two or a year. It's not something that's always going to be a big deal.
Sure. All right, last question. By the time this episode comes out, I think my daughter will be about 5 months, maybe 6 months. So, what advice do you have for me as a father of a 5 to 6 month old daughter?
Um, I don't know. I would say spend as much time as you can with her. Like, I think that's a really fun age, and so they start to really like interact with you more, and um, so just spend as much time with her as you can, and but also, take time for yourself. It's a hard balance. I don't know. I just enjoy it. I mean, it just enjoy it. I don't know. I don't have good advice.
That's good.
Survive, enjoy it, spend as much time as you can.
Yeah.
That's really all I've got.
All right. No, appreciate that. All right. So, this has been a great conversation. Where can the listeners go to connect with you or learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so I think that's probably the best way. Sarah Berkley on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I
Great.
would love
I'll
to,
link to
yeah,
that.
reach out.
I'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Thanks.
Sarah Berkley, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah.